Hello, my name is Angela, and I am going to read the first chapter of Little Women, which was written by Louisa May Alcott. It introduces you to the four girls who are the main characters in the book. And it was written 160 years ago, so you will find it very old-fashioned, but there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's quite interesting. They live in America at the time of the American Civil War, and their father is in the army, and they are living through rather hard times, the four girls and their mother. And I must just tell you that Louisa May Alcott, who wrote the book, had four sisters, was one of four sisters, and she was really writing about her life, and she saw herself as Jo in this story as she was writing it. Their names are Meg, Jo, Beth and Amy, and their ages are roughly between 15 and 8. And Amy, at this stage, is a spoilt brat, but she does improve. Right, let's go. Chapter 1. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Jo, lying on the rug. It's so dreadful to be poor, sighed Meg, looking down at her old dress. I don't think it's fair that some girls get lots of pretty things and other girls get nothing at all, said little Amy with an injured sniff. We've got father and mother and each other, said Beth contentedly from her corner. The four young faces on which the firelight shone brightened at the cheerful words, but darkened again as Jo said sadly, we haven't got father and shan't have him for some time. She didn't say perhaps never, but was silently thinking it, with her father far away fighting in the army. Nobody spoke for a minute. Then Meg said in an altered tone, you know the reason Mother proposed not having any presents this Christmas was because it was going to be a hard winter for everyone, and she thinks we ought not to spend money for pleasure when our men are suffering so in the army. We can't do much, but we can make our little sacrifices. And we ought to do it gladly, but I'm afraid I don't, said Meg, shaking her head as she thought regretfully of all the pretty things she wanted. I don't think the little we should spend would do any good. We've only got $1 each and the army wouldn't be much helped by that. I agree not to expect anything from Mother or you, but I do want to buy a book for myself. I've longed for a certain one, said Jo, who was a bookworm. I plan to spend mine on new music, said Beth, with a little sigh, which no one heard. I shall get a nice box of Faber's drawing pencils. I really need them, said Amy decidedly. Mother didn't say anything about our own money, and we don't wish to give up everything. Let's each buy what we want and have a little fun. I'm sure we work hard enough for it, said Jo, examining the heels of her shoes in a gentlemanly manner. I know I do, teaching those tiresome children all day when I'm longing to be at home, began Meg in a complaining tone again. You don't have half such a hard time as I do, said Joe. How would you like to be shut up for hours with a nervous, fussy old lady who keeps you trotting, is never satisfied, and worries you till you're ready to fly out of the window? It's naughty to fret, but I do think washing dishes and keeping the house tidy is the worst work in the world. It makes me cross and my hands get so stiff and I can't practice the piano, said Beth, looking at her rough hands, with a sigh that anyone could hear this time. I don't believe any of you suffer the way I do, cried Amy, for you don't have to go to school with impertinent girls and who plague you and won't let you do your lessons and laugh at your dresses and label your father if he isn't rich and insult you when your nose isn't nice. If you mean libel, I'd say so, and not talk about labels as if Papa was a pickle bottle, said Joe. I know what I mean, and you needn't be satirical about it. It's proper to use good words and improve my vocabulary, returned Amy with dignity. Don't peck at each other, children. Don't you wish we had the money that Papa lost when we were little, Joe? Dear me, how happy and good we'd be if we had no worries, said Meg, who could remember better times. You said the other day you thought we were a deal happier than the King children, for they're fighting all the time, in spite of their money. Yes, I did, Beth. Well, I think we are, for though we do have to work, we can make fun for ourselves, and we're a pretty jolly crew, as Joe would say. Joe does use such slang words, said Amy, with a reproving look at the long figure stretched out on the rug. Joe immediately sat up, put her hands in her pocket and began to whistle. Don't do that, Joy, it's boyish. That's why I do it. I detest rude, unladylike girls. I hate affected nimby-pimby chits. Birds in their little nests agree, sang Beth, the peacemaker, with such a funny face that they both started laughing, and the pecking ended. Really, girls, you're both to be blamed, said Meg, beginning to lecture in her elder sister fashion. You are old enough to leave off boyish tricks and behave better, Josephine. It didn't matter so much when you were a little girl, but now you're so tall and turn up your hair, you should really remember to act like a lady. I'm not, and if turning up my hair makes me one, I'll wear it in pigtails till I'm 20, cried Joe, pulling off her net and shaking down her chestnut mane. I hate to think I've got to grow up and be Miss March and wear long gowns and look as prim as a China Aster. It's bad enough to be a girl. Anyway, when I like boys' games and work and manners, I can't get over my disappointment in not being a boy. And it's worse than ever now, for I'm dying to go and fight with Papa, and I can only stay home and knit, like a poky old woman. And Joe shook the army sock till the needles rattled like castanets, and her ball bounded on the floor. Poor Joe. It's too bad, but it can't be helped. So you must try and be contented with making your name boyish and playing brother to us girls, said Beth, stroking the rough head at her knee with a hand that all the dishwashing and dusting in the world could not make ungentle in its touch. As for you, Amy, continued Meg, you are altogether too particular and prim. Your airs are funny now, but you grow up an affected little goose if you don't take care. I like your nice manners and refined ways of speaking when you don't try to be elegant. Put your absurd words, such as they are, out of the way. They're as bad as Joe's slang. If Joe is a tomboy and Amy is a goose, please, what am I? Said Beth. You're a dear and nothing else, answered Meg warmly, and no one contradicted her. For the mouse was the pet of the family. The clock struck 6. Having swept the hearth, Beth put a pair of slippers down to warm. Somehow, the sight of the old shoes had a good effect on the girls, for Mother was coming, and everyone brightened to welcome her. Meg stopped lecturing and lighted the lamp. Amy got out of the easy chair without being asked, and Jo forgot how tired she was as she sat up to hold the slippers nearer to the fire. They're quite worn out. Mummy really needs a new pair. I thought I'd get her some with my $1, said Beth. You couldn't get a pair of slippers with $1 these days. No, I shall, cried Amy. I'm the oldest, said Meg, but Jo cut in with a decided, I am the man of the family, and I shall use my $1 for them, because he told me to take special care of Mother while he was gone. I'll tell you what we'll do, said Beth. Let's each get her something for Christmas, but not get anything for ourselves. That's just like you, dear. What will we get? Exclaimed Jo. Everyone thought for a minute. Then Meg announced, as if the idea was suddenly suggested by the sight of her own pretty hands. I shall give her a nice pair of gloves. Army shoes, best to be had, said Jo. Some handkerchiefs, all hemmed, said Beth. I'll get a little bottle of cologne. She likes it, and it won't cost much, so I'll have some left over to buy my pencils, said Amy. How will we give the things? Said Meg. Sorry. Put them on the table and bring her in and see her open the bundles. Don't you remember how we do it for our birthdays? I used to be so frightened when it was my turn to sit at the big table with a crown on and see you all marching in with your presents and a kiss. I liked the things and the kisses, but it was dreadful to have to sit looking while you, with you all looking at me while I opened the bundles, said Beth, who was toasting her face and the bread for tea at the same time. Let Mummy think we're getting things for ourselves and then surprise her. We must go shopping tomorrow afternoon, Meg. There's so much to do, and we've also got to rehearse the play for Christmas night, said Jo, marching up and down with her hands behind her back and her nose in the air. I don't mean to act any more after this time. I'm getting too old for such things, observed Meg, who was such a child as ever at heart and loved dressing up. You won't stop, I know, as long as you can trail around in a white dress with your hair down and a gold paper crown. You are the best actress we've got, and there'll be an end of everything if you quit the boards, said Jo. We ought to rehearse tonight. Come here, Amy, and do the fainting scene, for you were as stiff as a poker in it last time. I can't help it. I never saw anyone faint. And I don't choose to make myself look black and blue, tumbling flat like you do. If I can't go down easily, I'll drop. If I can't, I shall fall into a chair gracefully. I don't care if Hugo does come at me with a pistol, returned Amy, who was not gifted with dramatic power, but was chosen because she was small enough to be carried out shrieking by the villain of the piece. Do it this way. Clasp your hands so and stagger across the room, crying frantically, Rodrigo, Rodrigo, save me, save me. And away went Jo with a melodramatic scream, which was truly thrilling. Amy followed, but she poked her hands out stiffly before she walked and jerked herself along as if she was a piece of machinery. And her ow was more suggestive of a pin being stuck in her than of fear and anguish. Jo gave a despairing groan, and Meg laughed outright, while Beth let her bread burn as she watched the fun. It's no use. Do the best you can when the time comes. And if the audience laugh, don't blame me. Come on, Meg. And they rehearsed. It's the best we've done yet, said Meg, as the dead villain sat up and rubbed his elbows. I don't see how you write and act such splendid things, Jo. You're a regular Shakespeare, said Beth, who firmly believed that her sisters were gifted with wonderful genius in all things. Not quite, replied Jo modestly. I do think The Witch's Curse is operatic tragedy, and very nice too. But I'd like to try Macbeth, if we only had a trap door for Banquo. I always wanted to do the killing part. Is that a dagger that I see before me? Muttered Jo, rolling her eyes and clutching the air, as she'd seen a famous actor do. No, it's the toasting fork, with Mother's shoe on the end of it instead of the bread. Beth stage struck, cried Meg, and the rehearsal ended in a general burst of laughter. Glad to find you so merry, my girls, said a cheery voice at the door, and the actors and audience turned to welcome a tall, motherly lady with a "Can I help you" look about her, which was truly delightful. She was not elegantly dressed, but a noble-looking woman, and the girls thought the grey cloak and unfashionable bonnet covered the most splendid mother in the world. Well, dearies, how have you got on today? There was so much to do getting the Christmas boxes ready for tomorrow that I didn't get home at lunchtime. Has anyone called, Beth? How's your cold, Meg? Joe, you do look as tired as death. Come and kiss me, baby. While making these maternal inquiries, Mrs. Marsh took her wet things off, her warm slippers on, and sitting down in the easy chair, drew Amy up onto her lap, preparing to enjoy the happiest hour of her busy day. The girls flew about, trying to make things comfortable, each in her own way. Meg arranged the tea table. Joe brought the wood in and set the chairs, dropping, overturning, and clattering everything as she touched. Beth trotted to and fro between the parlour and the kitchen, quiet and busy, while Amy gave directions to everybody, with her sitting with her hands folded. A quick, bright smile went round like a streak of sunshine. Beth clapped her hands, regardless of the biscuit she was holding, and Jo tossed her napkin, crying, "A letter! A letter! You've got a treat for us after supper, have you, Mother?" "Yes, a nice long letter from Father. He is well and thinks he shall get through the cold season better than we feared. He sends you all sorts of loving wishes for Christmas and an especial message to you girls," said Mrs. March, patting her pocket as if she'd got a treasure in it. "Hurry and get done. Don't stop to quirk your little finger and simper over your plate, Amy," said Jo, choking on her tea and dropping her bread, butter side down, on the carpet in her haste to get the treat. Beth ate no more. "I think it's so splendid for Father to go as a chaplain when he's too old to be drafted and not strong enough to be a soldier," said Meg warmly. "Don't I wish I could be a drummer, what's its name, or a nurse, so I could be near him and help him," explained Jo with a groan. "It must be very disagreeable to sleep in a tent and eat all sorts of bad-tasting things and drink out of a tin mug," sighed Amy. "When will he come home, Mummy?" asked Beth, with a little quiver in her voice. "Not for many months, dear, unless he's sick. He will stay and do his work faithfully as long as he can, and we won't ask him back a minute sooner than he can be spared. Now come and hear the letter." They all drew round the fire, Mother in the big chair, with Beth at her feet. Meg and Amy perched on either arm of the chair, and Jo leaning on the back where no one could see any sign of emotion if the letter should happen to be touching. Very few letters were written in those hard times that were not touching, especially those which fathers sent home. In this one, little was said about the hardships endured, dangers faced, or the homesickness conquered. It was a cheerful, hopeful letter, full of lively descriptions of camp life, marches, and military news. And only at the end did the writer's heart overflow with fatherly love and longing to be at home with his little girls. "Give them all my dear love and a kiss. Tell them I think of them by day, pray for them by night, and find my best comfort in their affection at all times. A year seems very long to wait before I see them, but remind them that when I come back to them, I may be fonder and prouder than ever of my little women. Everybody sniffed when they came to that part. Excuse me. Jo wasn't ashamed of the great tear that dropped off the end of her nose, and Amy never minded the rumpling of her curls as she hid her face in her mother's shoulder and sobbed out, "I am a selfish girl, and I'll truly try to be better, so he mayn't be disappointed in me by and by." "We all will," said Meg. "I think too much about my looks and hate to work, but won't any more, if I can help it. I'll try and be what he loves to call a little woman, and not be rough and wild, but do my duty here instead of wanting to be somewhere else," said Jo, thinking that keeping her temper at home was far harder than facing a rebel or two in the south. Beth said nothing, but wiped away her tears with the blue army sock she was knitting, and she began to knit with all her might, losing no time in doing the duty that lay nearest to her, while she resolved in her quiet little soul to be all that her father hoped to find when the year brought home the happy homecoming. They talked over the new plans while Hannah cleared the table. Then out came the 4 little work baskets, and the needles flew as the girls made sheets for Aunt March. It was uninteresting sewing, but tonight no one grumbled. They adopted Jo's plan of dividing the long seams into 4 parts and calling the quarters Europe, Asia, Africa and America. And in that way they got on capitally, especially when they talked about the different countries as they stitched their way through them. At 9, they stopped work and sang, as usual, before they went to bed. No one but Beth could get music out of the old piano, but she had a way of softly touching the yellow keys and making a pleasant accompaniment to the simple songs they sang. Meg had a voice like a flute, and she and her mother led the little choir. Amy chirruped like a cricket, and Jo wandered through the airs at her own sweet will, always coming out at the wrong place with a croak or a quaver that spoilt the most pensive tune. They had always done this from the time they could lisp, "Crickle, crickle, it will star," and it was become a household custom, for the mother was a born singer. The first sound in the morning was her voice as she went about the house singing like a lark, and the last sound at night was the same cheery sound, for the girls never grew tired of hearing the familiar lullaby. And that's the end of chapter 1. And the next chapter, which I won't read, is called A Merry Christmas. And I hope that you found it interesting enough to maybe find the book, which actually, although it is 160 years old, has never been out of the top 100 best read books in America in all that time. Thank you for listening. Bye.